So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
Another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. We're coming off nothing. We're going into nothing, but we got a lot to talk about in the world of professional wrestling, AEW, WWE, and much more. I'm joined, as always, to my left on YouTube, Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. You can find him on the Twitter at Icebreaker21. You can find myself at KRockJared on both Twitter and Instagram, and the show on Twitter at Heel to the Face. So we're going to start this week talking about, well, another show that breaks news. We don't really break the news. We talk about the news, but the news was broken. WWE backstage this past week broke that something we saw in the works a few months ago. John Morrison is officially signed with the WWE. He signed a multi-year contract. Where do you see John Morrison showing up in WWE?
Honestly, I kind of hope he goes to NXT for now. I think NXT, it'd be a good place for him. Honestly, when we were talking before the Survivor Series weekend, I figured he was going to. I thought he was going to go to War Games. That's where I thought he was going. I thought he'd be the surprise on Team Ciampa. So I'm just curious. I think NXT would be a great spot for him.
When's the last big surprise in WWE that wasn't announced?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, it's been how long? I mean, if you want to consider a big surprise, I mean, it really wasn't a big surprise because we kind of knew the most recent one was Kevin Owens.
When's I guess the surprise when it comes to a signing that the guy
AJ Styles?
Is that the last one?
Yeah, it's been what, 4 years?
Yeah, more. No, it's been more than 4.
Is it 5 years now?
He debuted at the 2016.
Is it 2015 or 2016?
You know, it was 2016.
So he's coming up on 4 years now.
Royal Rumble.
Shoot, man.
Because he wasn't at WrestleMania 31 in San Francisco. His first WrestleMania was in Dallas at WrestleMania 32 in 2016. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's coming on 5 years.
I didn't even realize it was...
Well, 2017.
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah.
Okay, well,
long enough.
4 years it's coming up on of AJ Styles. But is that the last big surprise of somebody coming? I mean, I feel
the
NXT said a few.
The Hardys. I mean, that was cool. I mean, you got the pop at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That was,
I just don't understand why they don't do that more.
Yeah, why do we, here's my thing.
Why didn't John Morrison just debut at the Royal Rumble?
Yeah, or NXT War Games.
Yeah.
Something like that. So now, here's what's going to happen now, and this is going to ruin it for us as fans. He's going to debut at Royal Rumble, but we're going to be like, oh, well, we kind of figured he was going to be there anyway. So it's like, this kind of sucks, So it's like, to me, what would be the ultimate swerve at this point is maybe, maybe you debut him at NXT, maybe.
So you want to see him at NXT? Is there anyone there you'd want to see him feud with? Matt Riddle? Matt Riddle
is one name. Honestly, I'd love to see him and Adam Cole. I think that would be money. Roderick Strong's another name. Honestly,
it's too bad, this would be a great chance if, they could really do something with EC3. It's too bad they dropped the ball on that.
Well, there's more to the EC3 story than that's been really reported. I was reading some information probably this past weekend over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I saw that EC3's been dealing with concussion issues. So I guess that's why he's not really. But even so,
they never really did anything with EC3.
No, they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball.
And that's a main event. I've seen that match already. John Morrison as Johnny Nitro Mundo, whatever he was, Impact. Versus EC3, and that was really going city to city in Impact Wrestling, and that was as much as everyone downplays Impact Wrestling, I mean, if it wasn't for his resurgence in Impact Wrestling, he probably wouldn't be the hot commodity coming back to WWE that he is.
Oh, definitely not. I mean,
when he left, nobody was really crying for him to not.
We're at that point,
no one was begging for him to stay. Same with Cody Rhodes. Well, obviously it wasn't Impact Wrestling, but when Cody Rhodes left, no one really cared, and now everybody cares about Cody Rhodes. In fact, that's probably why he did what he did, because nobody cared, because he wasn't anything in WWE.
And be honest with you, he's kind of important in the business now. So
Yeah, he's important, but he wasn't when he left.
Yeah, he wasn't.
When he left, it was Cody Rhodes. I mean, he was important in the business when it came to his name.
You remember how he left, right? He left as Stardust.
Yes.
And that's why he left, because he was so upset with how they were using him, which you can't blame the guy. He's his talent. He's a talented tactician.
He was in a 8-man ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship to kick off WrestleMania 32, I could think of a ton other names. I thought he downplayed, because there was Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Zack Ryder. He was probably the least excited I was to watch a WrestleMania. Like, when he was Stardust and his music hit, it made me feel like WrestleMania isn't really WrestleMania. Because, that at the time, he was as low on the totem pole as, he was Titus O'Neil.
Oh, Titus O'Neil's. Yeah, he was.
When it came
Slater.
to, he was Heath Slater. He was somebody who, when his music hit, if you were at Raw, you were hoping you were watching them tape main event prior to Raw, and that it wasn't actually part of Raw.
Yeah, no, that's true, and it's
because it'd be a waste.
And speaking of, another individual, not to the level of Cody, but Drew McIntyre. Speaking of, like Heath Slater, it kind of made me think of the old EC3 or the what was it, the 3MB? I was thinking EC3, 3MB. And look how good he's been. I don't know if they're using him the right way at this point, but I think his time, away from WWE made him into the complete package, and the guy, the chosen one, as Vince McMahon would coin that phrase with Drew McIntyre. So he was coined that young Intercontinental Champion years ago, and now he's back.
We saw a lot with John Morrison, or Johnny Nitro.
I call him Johnny Nitro.
We saw a lot with him prior to leaving WWE. Now, he didn't leave while he left. Well, nobody was running for him to stay. He did have a lot of potential. The problem was, I think he really got ruined in ECW.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was
that's
bad.
where he got, because everybody that was a part of ECW, other than CM Punk, I guess, got ruined. And I think the idea is that he didn't really do much after ECW. If I'm not mistaken, he might have been gone before ECW was even done. I know he was ECW champion. He was supposed to face Chris Benoit originally. He was the man who was supposed to face Chris Benoit at that Clash of Champions pay-per-view. Or the Vengeance pay-per-view, whatever it was that he was supposed to face. I think it was Clash of Champions, because all the championships were on the line, and he ended up facing CM Punk with the belt on the line. But yeah, that was his last stay in WWE, and while he showed that he was a good enough singles competitor to be the ECW heavyweight champion, which at that time was the third most important championship.
Yeah.
Third is nowhere, a third at that time, it's hard to put on a scale of how unimportant it was. It was third at the time, but now it's so hard to believe, it was pretty low.
Right now the third would be NXT, but NXT is
I feel
on
Adam Cole versus, Ezekiel Jackson, who was the last ECW champion. Night and day difference.
Yeah, 100%. NXT is a totally different brand. Like, it's just a great brand. ECW
People were excited at Survivor Series to see the NXT championship being defended. When the ECW championship was defended at pay-per-views, which it always was, no one was ever excited.
No, people...
Even when it was the only match at December to Dismember. It was the main event. People were like, this is garbage.
Yeah, that was, honestly, people were probably leaving early at that point, or hitting the head.
That was the worst, probably the worst pay-per-view in WWE history, that December to Dismember ECW pay-per-view. And they, we could go back to the invasion angle and that angle, where you have so much to offer and such a chance to do something, but they dropped the ball, obviously. And that time it was not just WWE's fault, but they were having the issues with RVD and Sabu and everybody who they wanted to be involved were getting in trouble outside. So that whole pay-per-view dropped the ball, and it ended up being Johnny Nitros of the world in the Elimination Chamber.
And here's the thing, Johnny Nitro, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, whatever you want to call him, the guy's a great wrestler. he's a technically gifted wrestler. I'm looking forward to it. Sometimes it's like, him being away from the WWE for as long as he has, he may have had his run the way it ended, years ago, but it's kind of one of those absence makes the heart grow fonder. And maybe absence in this case will, maybe to a newer audience, because by this point there's some younger generation of kids that don't even know who this guy is, unless they're a big wrestling fan. But to me, it's kind of cool, because at that point I didn't really care if he left, and now I'm curious to see what he's got left in the tank, being in his late 30s now.
And in Impact Wrestling, he showed he's got a lot in the tank. And I think the idea is you just got to, as we say about everybody, got to just put him in the right fit, the right storyline. And, I think when he comes back, you do got to tweak his character a little bit. You got to get rid of that slow motion cam, the kind of mid-card gimmick. You got to give him a more heart and edge. He's coming back to a different WWE or NXT at that matter. You got to give him a darker image. You got to give him more talking time. I felt that on the mic, he was too, especially at the end, he was too cool guy. He was too, I felt he was kind of played out. He wasn't. He didn't have an edge to him. He was a good competitor, but I felt the character was just starting to lag. To me, his best character was with Eminem, and they had the matches and they had a decent character because that was a tag team gimmick. When he was by himself, kind of doing the pretty boy image, it worked for a minute. The slow motion camera worked for a minute, but then it didn't really get him any grit or any real toughness when he came into matches. Kind of like a pretty boy, kind
of like Tyler Breeze.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I mean, Eminem, man, that's Mercury and Morrison. Oh, I like it. What's Joey Mercury doing?
He's in the back.
Is he still in the back?
Yeah.
I don't see. I always see Jamie Noble in the back. I don't see him back there.
He's still in the back, from what I believe. I haven't heard of his release or anything like that. But
can we bring back? Can we do like a hashtag bring back J&J Security?
No. Here's the question: if in their prime, if you were to bring back Mercury or Morrison, obviously it's Morrison that's been keeping up, doing the weights, and I think Mercury's not up to par. But if you were going back at that time, which one would you think would be the better singles competitor, Mercury or Morrison? Let's say go back to the Eminem days, and you had to pick at that moment. Because I was a big fan of Mercury. I mean, especially some of the hits he took in that one pay-per-view where he broke his nose.
Joey, I liked Joey.
I thought he was tougher.
He was tougher. I don't know. I saw more of a star factor with Morrison, and that's just me. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Mercury was good. He was a tough dude, but Vince looks for star factor, not really tough guys anymore. Mick Foley was, one of the great, I'd say the greatest tough guy of all time, but Vince didn't really want to put the title on Mick Foley, Mankind, Dude Love, Cactus Jack, wherever you want to call him. They want to go with the more charismatic, like back in the day, like The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H. You want to go with, HBK. That, to me, Mercury was more, he was a tough guy. I'd think I'd still stick with Morrison. I think the charismatic factor kind of, outweighs the tough guy thing.
So moving on, NXT AEW last Wednesday night, NXT drew an 800,000 rating, while AEW drew 600,000. So now what we were talking about before, that even if they beat NXT, it wasn't that big of a deal because of the fact of they're going against NXT and not Raw or SmackDown. But now they're not even beating NXT. So essentially, they're the fourth most watched wrestling program in professional wrestling in America currently, behind WWE, and then them. 600,000. Now we're talking, and being behind NXT is a big deal because NXT is a program that USA could give or take. AEW and TNT, I mean, that's a very big partnership. I want to say USA is excited to have WWE because it's probably a bigger viewership than they would have with whatever program they're putting on, but it's not, it's not their SmackDown with Fox. It's not their $1 billion baby. It's AEW and TNT, though. That is. I mean, that was a big thing. TNT is putting AEW there in place of, movies, in place of other new shows. They're really hoping that it could be more than just the filler program on Wednesday night. I mean, they're doing a lot of their promotions. I mean, I was watching baseball during the postseason. They were promoting it. They promote it. I see commercials for it on other networks, on TBS. So 600,000 to be, pretty much your flagship show on your network.
Yeah, it's not a good look. I don't know what that attributes to, like the drop in ratings. Maybe people just don't care about. I think the first couple weeks, people are just interested in seeing something different. I like the product. I think Dynamite's been really good. I've enjoyed it. I think maybe it's people they're like, okay, this is wrestling. I got enough wrestling. I'll just stick to WWE. That's kind of where I'm at this point because there's so much wrestling out there. I love it. I love Dynamite. I enjoy it. I think it's different. It's fresh. It's not the boring WWE model that we have. So I enjoy it. I don't know. What is your take on it? It's a good program, but I'm just looking at the vitality of it.
when it comes to AEW, being on TNT.
What do you think the drop in ratings is attributed to? I
think the drop in ratings is attributed to just the lack of curiosity now. Now you're just you're getting back to that core niche audience. And I think that there is a large audience that wants to watch professional wrestling, differently, just like there's a large audience that wants to watch professional football differently. The problem is, I don't think a large enough group of that audience is willing. There's not a large enough audience that's willing to essentially stop watching the other. There's a large group that complains about the NFL all the time. And if there's an alternative,
they still watch.
They still watch.
Yeah.
And that's still their bread and butter. And they'll watch the other out of curiosity and they'll be happy that the other exists, but they're not going to replace it. That's, I guess, the big thing. There's not a large enough audience out there that's willing to replace their love of WWE with AEW. There might be some people who never watched wrestling that joined on and are now, or haven't watched it in a while and are AEW fans. But I think you don't have enough people that are willing to replace one for the other. Like, I am going to watch the XFL. I'm curious, and obviously week 1, I think of that is going to have the highest ratings, and it's probably going to go down from there.
Yep.
But I'm not willing, regardless of how good XFL is great. If it's the best, it'll be awesome to have an alternative when NFL is over. It will not replace the NFL.
No, and here's the thing: AAF just failed, so that was bad.
Yeah, all the extra, AAF.
I mean, Arena Football League has ceased operations too. Just did.
The Arena Football League, I felt, was on its downscale for a while.
Last 5-10 years.
And to be honest with you, Arena Football at its peak was a pretty good alternative, and I think it was the best alternative for a few reasons. One, it was a completely different game
for that short time. It was definitely a different alternative. The dynamics of the game were different. It was like the size of it was a football field compacted into like a size of a hockey rink or a basketball court.
It was
cool.
So different that, and it had some longevity. I remember watching in like 1999. It had been around for like 15 years at that time. So the Arena Bowl was not like this fresh, brand new thing. I felt like there was a good amount of fan bases. You didn't have to draw a ton because you're looking at arenas that drew 15,000. You weren't looking to draw, football stadium crowd. So that was a good alternative. I felt that as of late, they had like 4 teams left, and they were not even some in big cities. I think one was in like Washington, Maryland, or Washington, Pennsylvania, or something ridiculous like that. Like not even, Albany had a team. Like New York City no longer had a team. Tampa didn't have a team.
Dallas had a team for a while.
But as they ceased operations, they were down to 4 teams. And they had been down to 4 teams for a few years.
Yeah, I think one of the teams was a Soul. I think Philadelphia Soul still is around.
Yeah, they just had, in the Northeast, they had 4 teams left. But yeah, I mean, that was a good alternative. Things like the XFL are going to try, or even, AEW are trying to replicate, wrestling, or the actual product of the main brand. Like XFL is trying to actually replicate the NFL exactly. And even as we say, the AAF was a good alternative. XFL at its core will be a good alternative. AEW is a good alternative, but nothing, as I said before, is good to replace it. No, you're not replacing your fandom. We haven't just stopped talking WWE, stopped talking about, the main brand, and all of a sudden this podcast is just AEW all the time. I don't think anyone says
that. Yeah, well, maybe.
Maybe. Well, there's probably a few out there who maybe didn't even have a podcast
and now they're doing it.
And now they're doing it. But I said there's not a good enough core audience, I feel, that's going to switch over. Like people like ourselves, we tuned in, and I think the big thing is watching it live. Watching it live is another big thing, because of the fact that WWE has so much programming. I think you watch more of that live because you got to stay up before the next show. AEW is fresh for a whole week.
Yeah, so you could literally watch it on Tuesday night for last Wednesday. It works out well. I mean, here's the thing. I'll be honest with you. I can't watch it that far out because I'm already going to see the spoilers anyways. But I get what you're saying. I mean,
have there been anything really great on the Dynamite shows that are worth spoiling? I mean, there's a lot of good matches, and that's really what they're trying to go for. And when you hear about a match being good, you go back and rewatch that. But has there been any sort of real surprises in the storylines?
I mean, surprises.
Jack Hager, maybe.
Was
a while ago.
I mean, it was I would say. Yeah, I mean, hey, I think Hager. I think that's one. And not on Dynamite, but like AEW in general when Moxley made his debut.
Well, that was a pay-per-view. Yeah,
that was cool.
I'm saying on the show Dynamite, that's the thing.
I mean,
it's got really good wrestling, and I think that's what they're trying to focus on. The problem is that you could watch it years down the line. That's not going to really make you have to watch it right now.
I would say, honestly,
good wrestling, you can go back and rewatch those matches. If I tell you, hey, I can tell you all the results of the matches, but they're all really good, you can go back and rewatch them, even if you know the results. I go back and rewatch old, Mick Foley versus Undertaker, Hell in a Cell. We already know what happens there, but it's
seen it a few times.
It's good to watch. Now, what gets you to watch live television programming is, like something in the storyline that gets, like a big surprise return or something like that, a good twist at the end, a heel turn.
Here's the thing. I would say this. I liked what they did last week. That was to me, it was kind of a cool moment where Chris Jericho's father was at Dynamite this past week. And it was funny because they're in Chicago, and he was a New York Ranger. He was a New York Ranger, great. And they were just poking the Chicago fans, like the Blackhawk fans, and the real fans are Rangers. I thought that was cool. I thought it was memorable because as a sports fan, it was kind of cool because a lot of people, believe it or not, didn't even know Jericho's father was a pro athlete. So to me, it was kind of cool to see. Oh, they're bringing his dad in. So I thought it was cool. And I was talking to non-wrestling fans who happen to be Ranger fans. And I sent them a clip of the of the video because I recorded it on my phone. And I was like, dude, check this out, the Rangers, and they're like, oh man, I'll have to check out the whole skit. And I was like, cool. So it's like even non-wrestling fans were kind of intrigued by this, from at least the pulse that I got from people.
So NXT, outside of when Worlds Collide the night before Royal Rumble, looks like they're going to be moving their pay-per-views to Sunday. NXT, I want to say Blackpool is a Sunday night now, Sunday afternoon-ish. But the NXT pay-per-view that's going to stand by itself in February, that's not going to be associated with the WWE, pay-per-view weekend, is going to be a Sunday night. Do you like that move of, one, moving it away from other WWE pay-per-views, having their own standalone events, and two, moving it to Sunday nights?
I don't mind it. I mean, I think for the NXT brand, I think it's good because everything is so compacted into one weekend. I think it's okay to spread it out. And I think NXT has got so much juice in general where it can stand alone as a pay-per-view and it can stand alone on a Sunday night. And I like the timing of it because what day is it in February? Because I know Super Bowl is right around the corner.
Well, no, it's in the middle of February, I think. So, it's not going up against Elimination Chamber or anything.
So you know what they probably did, and WWE is smart in these aspects? It's probably the one Sunday of the year where you have have Super Bowls. There's no Sunday. It's no football.
Well,
no
it might be a few more because I know that when Worlds Collide is a Saturday, the night before the Royal Rumble, which is always in that bye week between the championship games and the Super Bowl. So it's probably more than just the week after that. Is the week after that the Daytona 500? So
how it usually works is you have the Super Bowl.
I think it's like February 15th or something. So it's in the middle. It's not. I mean, I don't know exactly where it is on the February. It's
because there's always that one Sunday where it's like the slowest Sunday of the year for sports, where it's the Sunday, the first Sunday without football, and the Sunday before NASCAR. So it's. I'm wondering if it's that.
I feel like WWE's put stuff on that before, but they've gone against the NBA All-Star Game.
Well, they've gone against. Let's backtrack here. The NBA All-Star Game is not even close to the Super Bowl or the Daytona 500. The All-Star Game is not that popular.
Well, I would probably I agree with you when it comes to attendance.
No, I don't even think the viewership's that great. How many All-Star games do you really watch? I don't really watch many because I don't think they're that good.
It still has like that cachet when it comes to national attention. I'm not saying I watch it or anything like that, but it's like the Golden Globes or it's like the Oscars where it still has that water cooler talk on a Monday morning. And WWE's gone up against it before. They don't mind going against the All-Star Game.
It's tough to go against football.
Remember, the NBA All-Star Game did one time draw the same crowd. It might actually have been better than what that WWE drew at AT&T Stadium in Dallas for the All-Star Game. They drew 100,000 people for the All-Star Game because they've turned the All-Star Game into an event. And it's kind of funny that we mentioned the NBA All-Star Game because WrestleMania, let's be real, it's a really important event to wrestling fans. It's a big deal, but it's nowhere anywhere near the Super Bowl or anything like that when it comes to the cash cow. So when WrestleMania actually comes into a town and they break down the revenue that WrestleMania brings, they compare it to cities that host the NBA All-Star Game, and that revenue is comparable. Like when they came to Dallas, they said, how much money did the NBA All-Star Game bring in when it was here? When the NBA All-Star Game was in Las Vegas, and that's not an NBA city. So obviously you think how much money did just this game bring in? That's what WrestleMania is actually compared to as an NBA All-Star Game.
See, Vegas to me it's hard to kind of factor in the money because Vegas.
Well, you look at hotels, stuff like that.
Yeah, but people
uptick in business.
Yeah, but
that wouldn't normally.
I mean, I think it's kind of overstated, to be honest with you, because Vegas is, the city that never sleeps. So it's regardless, there's always something going on in the city. So there could be, people are spending money there anyways. It's a gambler's paradise.
WrestleMania last year in New York City brought less money to New York City than it did to other cities like Orlando, Dallas, New Orleans, because those cities had people specifically going there. New York City already had a large base of wrestling fans that were probably going to WrestleMania that didn't even have to really travel.
No, they were in they were not even in hotels. They were just at their apartments or
there's probably a large chunk of people who were already in New York City,
or at least in the tri-state area.
I feel like the other places like New Orleans and Orlando, especially Orlando, I feel like the 70,000 that were on hand, I would probably say a good 80% of that were people that came in. At WrestleMania last year, was 80% of it from out of town? I don't know, but the numbers show that
I think Tampa's gonna be like that too.
Tampa's gonna be a out of town driven event
for sure. Because I mean, what do they have there?
Like Florida in general.
They got the Bucks. They got the the Lightning.
It's a big city. It's bigger than Orlando.
Oh, I haven't even forgot about the Rays. They're really bad, but it's an interesting sports city. I don't think it's a really touristy, city now like New York City.
Well, and that's kind of why I've always wanted WrestleMania to go there, but I can see kind of why they've gone to Orlando twice versus Tampa.
Well, Orlando has the Disney factor.
Yeah, and that's obviously big in the wrestling factor. Yeah. And, I would say if anything, WWE would be apt to go up against the All-Star Game more than the Daytona 500 because it's also got that factor. I feel those fans, I don't mean to say it, but a lot of NASCAR fans and wrestling fans, that I think mixes more than NBA and wrestling fans. I feel you got some more similarities there.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think that's a fair comparison. I mean, I'm a fan of all of them, so I know I have friends that are on both sides of it. I got friends that are huge gamers that are like they play like NBA 2K and then they love WWE. So it's the cool thing about WWE is the people, like, you could be in an office setting or just like at a restaurant, like we could all be dressed up nice. You know what's funny? There's a lot of wrestling fans out there. A lot of people. Yeah, it's one of those things that isn't as public knowledge. I mean, that's how this podcast began. We had no idea while working with each other that we had that, because it's just not something you just bring up. Oh, you're a wrestling fan.
Super Bowl is something you can go up to someone you've never met before and say, hey, did you watch the Super Bowl? Because it is just so socially acceptable. But wrestling, you either like it or you don't like it or don't know much about it.
Or well, here's the thing. I would say this. You're either a fan or you just don't like it because you don't know. Because people...
Well, I mean, there are people who know and just don't like it. I mean, you got to give people credit that they know of something but don't like it. They're allowed to... It's not... They just don't know.
No, the thing is, the majority of people that don't like wrestling... And I'm sorry, I have conversations with people...
There's a lot of people who don't know, though.
They just don't know. Or they're like, oh, that's scripted. Like, no kidding, your trashy reality shows are scripted.
Well, yeah, there's lots of people who do and don't like those. There's people who know they exist and don't. You can't just say that there's people out there who either love it or don't know about it, but if they did, they would love it. There's people out there who would watch wrestling and then watch it, and after it's over, say, I don't care for that.
I mean, I'll say this. I think the majority of people that don't like it are people that just think it's they say, oh, it's fake, it's scripted. Like, no kidding, like, no shit, I know that. Like, I've been watching wrestling since I was a kid. So to me, yes, you're right. There's probably a small group of people out there that just they know about it and they're like, yeah, this sucks. I watched it. It sucks. I'm sure that's fine. That's great. But a lot of people that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people on a daily basis, and the majority of the people that I deal with or are friends with, or
just afraid to admit that they like it,
or they're afraid. Yeah, number one, they're afraid to admit it. But as soon as I make a comment about like John Cena, oh yeah, I actually, I watch a little bit of that. It's so funny because like a lot of people are closet fans. It's so weird. Like, just embrace being a wrestling fan. Who cares? You know what I mean? Embrace it. Like it's cool to be a wrestling fan. Like I like wearing. When I go out in public, I wear wrestling tees. Like I shop all the time.
Well, that's because you already have a wife. I mean, for the rest of us out there, I'm just saying.
Well, here's the best part is shout out to my wife. She wasn't really a wrestling fan, but she didn't really she watched it back in like the Attitude Era anyway. So like in the in the 90s, it wasn't really her cup of tea. So maybe she was in that. Maybe I guess you're right. Maybe she was in that small demographic of people that like watched it and kind of steered away from it. But once she got started dating me and we started getting more serious. She actually has, her ringtone is Sasha Banks, so she's a wrestling fan now. So I kind of flipped the script on her a little bit.
So to answer the question that I brought to you a while ago, my opinion is I don't like NXT moving to Saturday nights. I'd say why rock the boat? It's or moving from Saturdays to night. And I would say maybe get it away from. And they've done this already once before, where they did get it away from a WWE weekend. Survivor Series, Rumble, WrestleMania. Maybe do it on its own. But I feel do more of them on their own on Saturday nights, and don't do both at the same time. Don't move it to Sundays and put them on their own all at the same time. I still like Saturday nights. I understand the viewership might not be the greatest because it's Saturday night. I'm just wondering. We'll find out, I guess, in February if they had the uptick in viewership.
It's going to be curious to see what the numbers come up.
Yeah.
Now, real quick before we go, I just wanted to read something interesting. So, obviously, Seth Rollins was trying to get this match going with CM Punk, and Rollins came out and said, "I'm here, he's not here. I wish we could have a face-to-face, but it's not in the cards." So my question to you is this just to play it up, or do you think there's no chance they're wrestling? Where do you stand on that?
I say no chance anytime soon. I say this might be brought up in a few months, but I don't see a rebuttal next week. I don't see anything coming on this earlier than WrestleMania.
Okay.
The earliest that they would contemplate even wrestling each other, the earliest CM Punk would contemplate getting in the ring is WrestleMania. I would be surprised otherwise.
Okay. I'm just it's a match that a lot of fans want to see. So deep down I want to see
CM Punk back in the ring is a thing everybody wants to see regardless. versus Seth Rollins would be great, but in the ring in general, I think is something everyone wants to see. So next week we'll be leading up to Tables, Ladders, and Chairs.
Ooh, I'm so excited for that. Not really.
We'll talk a little NWA Power, some big matches named for that. That is going to be next Saturday night.
Oh, Power's on Saturday night next week?
Power's on Saturday night on paper, or not Power, their pay-per-view. NWA, their pay-per-view.
So it's not on YouTube.
It is not on YouTube. So it is $19.99 on Fight TV.
Fight TV, okay, or alternative sources as well.
Or alternative sources, and maybe we'll talk Starrcade. What a bummer. That was even probably worse than I thought it could have been.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not even going to take more than 10 seconds to say I didn't even want to watch it. I read stories about it, and I got the pulse of Twitter and social media.
And let me tell you, I understand it was only an hour. WWE could have done a lot more with an hour. Just saying.
It just sucked.
All right, that's it for this week's edition of the show. For Brandon Icebreaker Clements, myself, at K-Rock Jared. See ya.